Since we started experiencing this gas flaring and all the rest, we cannot have good harvest any longer.
In terms of water, if the rain falls, then you want to see the color of the water that falls is black.
Across Nigeria's Niger Delta, emissions are released every day from oil and gas operations. Some are visible. Carbon dioxide rises with flame and smoke. Others are invisible. Methane leaks quietly from wells, pipelines, and processing facilities. This unseen gas is the greater threat. Methane traps far more heat than carbon dioxide in the near term, intensifying warming while remaining largely undetected by the communities who live beside these sites. What people notice is what they can see. What endangers them the most is what they cannot see. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that traps more than 80 times as much heat as carbon dioxide over a 20-year period and has become a major part of Nigeria's climate footprint. The World Resources Institute and Africa's Center for Energy Policy reports that the country accounted for 16% of sub-Saharan Africans' methane emission between 2010 and 2020. And in 2023 alone, flared about 5 billion cubic feet of gas, placing it amongst the top 10 gas-flaring countries globally. As Nigeria turns to gas as a transition fuel to expand energy access and economic growth, the risk of increasing methane emissions and gas flaring looms large. Without stronger controls, the expansion threatens deepening legacy pollution for decades to come. For communities living near oil operations, the consequences are already severe. Polluted air, poisoned water, and toxic exposure have turned once thriving villages into health crisis zones. Livelihoods are suffering. Fishermen struggle with dwindling catches, while farmers watch their crops shrink in infertile soil.
As farmers, our crops can no longer produce as big as it's supposed to be. Our yam also are no more growing the way it's supposed to be. Formerly, our yams are very bigger time of cultivation. But today, the presence of the gas flaring lights has affected our economy, our agriculture. So it can no longer produce well. We will have less money. Our crop does not go move market anymore.
So I doing one dengue marked by the there's 20 years ago. Magada maba toywa ki wangado mbokiwa mbabo kitaki waita. Haruza menam for India. But now almost about 5 years ngetembo abage wang boko iwa mabu agboy waro banga so mframen say this so mbok nanda government bekan adesino amnomen.
According to the International Energy Agency, across Nigeria's oil and gas sector, methane escapes in 3 main ways. Venting, the intentional release of gas directly into the atmosphere, is the largest source, accounting for 68% of emissions. Leaks from faulty equipment and aging infrastructure contributes 19%. And incomplete flaring, when flames fail to burn gas completely, account for 12%. Even communities located kilometers from these flare sites and pipelines are not spared.
In terms of water, if the rain falls, then you want to see the color of the water that falls is black. If we even fetch water from the pump and keep it for 2 days, you will observe that the water will change the color. Whilst water is colorless, will begin to develop a certain color. So with all these problems we are facing, it's very unfortunate that government has not even paid attention to the community concerned, neither the company concerned. So people are suffering seriously. There are a lot of diseases that come in as a result of the flaring.
So, but right from when the multinational companies came into operate, we started experiencing some ill conditions that affect the people, affects our lands, affects everything that makes us, keep us managing our lives. We don't actually have a gas flaring site here in Ekarama, but we have it at Adibawa, which is barely 3 kilometers away from the community, from this community. So, and that whenever they are flaring the gas there, it affects this community seriously. Because there were a lot of, it gives health hazards. There were a lot of people who were always suffering from suffocating, suffering from cough and catarrh. And sometimes even this, right now, today, here in our community, so many people are suffering from eye sickness.
I do order. They say my order, we don't have order. Don't I my order? We are not going to go. Then company get them maybe I don't go. I may be wrong. See, I know you're not that bad. Bye bye to I and Odon. We won't let him bong. Because you're tired at that time of every day. I don't know. I've money be a young of after my beer of Brahma. It all company, they could make a maid, can't ask Ara. I couldn't women. I couldn't come a good mother.
Women often bear a disproportionate share of this burden. In many communities, they rely on open flames from gas flaring sites to process and dry staple foods like gari. These prolonged exposure, including to invisible methane from incomplete flaring at the flare sites, increases their risk of respiratory diseases, pregnancy complication, and other reproductive health challenges. For elders who remember a different past, the contrast is stark. The land once provided reliably. Today, farming takes longer, produces less, and offers little certainty for the next generation. As once fertile farmlands worsen, and rivers and creeks that supported fishing livelihoods are increasingly polluted, household incomes fall, food security weakens, and families are pushed deeper into poverty. These communities continue to bear the brunt of emissions they did not cause.
When I grew up, at first, the early age of my life, following our grandmother and my mother to the farm, we were having good harvest. But these days, it has taken long. Since we started experiencing this gas flaring and all the rest, we cannot have good harvest any longer. As you can see, I'm just coming from harvest. Look at my attire.
Ikang mobili yakka yang bofon ke akbam. Diana do ya kam bon to wi kati yak. Nsong ikang si wong me a affect me weti eti. Te me ten mong. E me ya dem to wi kati de mong se boy wong. A wi kati yak abai mom. Obu mi the same thing a wi kati mom. So afana me nyine ti eti. Ama ban tru kati se fo wan aba be ne ke be akoko fong when the tomfo.
Beyond immediate pollution, methane contributes to the formation of ground-level ozone, a pollutant linked to asthma, heart diseases, and other health complications. These are well-documented public health threats. that intensify as oil and gas activities expand, especially in communities already exposed to pollution. For Nigeria, addressing methane is no longer only a climate obligation, it is a public health imperative.
The thing about methane is that it is both a climate air pollutant and a hazardous air pollutant. This means that beyond its enormous contribution to greenhouse gas emission, it also has a lot of impacts on our health and also on the environment. Research has shown that direct exposure to methane at higher concentrations can lead to difficulties in breathing and slurred speech and even other cardiovascular diseases. When methane is combined with other gases, their impact can even be more detrimental. It's even worse when you have communities who are exposed to direct oil and gas activities. I'm talking about communities that are living closer to onshore fields. These people live close to flare sites. Day in and day out, they are exposed to gas flaring. They see the flare stacks, they see the light, and then the environmental issues that come with it. Effective methane mitigation is not just an environmental issue. Effective methane mitigation is also a health issue. And it's about time that we all come together to find ways of dealing with this situation.
Despite commitments like the Global Methane Pledge and a 2030 gas flare-out target, the gap between promises and action remains wide. Oil and gas companies continue to flare and vent with little consequences. Accountability is absent, enforcement is weak. But change is possible, with experts recommending clear methane baselines, strengthened monitoring, and strict enforcement.
Government is losing billions of dollars every year from methane emissions, especially from the oil and gas sector. When gas is flared, when gas leakages happen from operational facilities of oil and gas companies, what happens is that we are literally allowing money to go up in smoke. That is gas that could power, energy into homes, into industries across the country. It is also money that could become revenue for governments to invest in development needs of the country. So these issues are there, and that is why we're asking for action on methane emissions reduction to be stepped up. Yes, Nigeria has signed a number of commitments like the Global Methane Pledge, which seeks to reduce methane emissions by at least 30% by the year 2030. There is also the ever-shifting goalpost around gas flare-out, which currently stands at 2030 also. These are very commendable, commitments. However, we need to see a lot of real action happening. So what we need to see more is a lot more investment in methane abatement technologies, measurement technologies, verification by civil society and communities. So all this needs to happen, simultaneously for us to get real action going on methane emissions reduction.
Oil and gas companies are still flaring gas and are leaking methane emissions like nothing is wrong. There are barely any consequences, there is no pressure to fix things, and there is no accountability. So what needs to change? First, we need to measure what matters. The National Council on Climate Change, which is the institution mandated to drive climate action and energy transition, needs to set clear baselines for methane and create simple ways for all the different actors to be able to understand how much progress we're making. This is especially important for communities that are affected by methane emissions. This is the only way that we can make real progress and make sure that this time is not like all the other times that have happened before.
Nigeria must adopt a clear, coordinated, and accountable approach. This means strengthening monitoring through inspections and satellite data, enforcing compliance, especially during asset transfers, commercializing flared gas, and rewarding companies that meet reduction targets. Methane reduction isn't just climate policy. it is a matter of justice for those living with its daily impact.